Englehart was quite interesting in what he was able to accomplish and what he did, and didn't realize it was a big deal at all.
He probably in some sort of way was a kind of a genius ahead of his time, and a kind of a misfit in that sense. And it's hard to be a misfit. You don't fit in with the rest of the people. And so you just go over in a corner and tinker. And I shouldn't call it tinkering because it's more important than that.
John Englehart, who was Orton's father, came to Glendora and learned about growing trees. That was kind of what started, I think, the interest of the Englehart family in the citrus area. Glendora was fortunate because it was the banana belt of the citrus industry. I mean, the whole shebang was a town of maybe 400 or 500 people for a long time, which were all citrus growers.
Well, in Glendora, it was a farming community, mainly citrus crops, and Orton was on a neighboring property to the LaFetra property. You know, there were only a handful of families that lived in Glendora at that time, and everyone pretty much knew each other.
My dad's father was a cousin to Orton. My memories of him are kind of vague because he was very shy. He was an only child, and he loved the nature and agriculture. He loved growing things, and he loved experimenting. You know, obviously he experimented with a better way to get water to the trees. And I think he was very, for whatever reason, he was just very introverted. I went with my father a few times to visit him when I was a child. My dad was a real outgoing, friendly man, but he cared about Orton, and I think he was fascinated by him. I think they, more than anything, just talked, probably about citrus. My father grew up in that environment. I used to go with him when I wasn't in school and just tag along and go through the grove and help him get the leaves out of the furrows where the water would go. I remember the big, long wagon with the pipes.
They had pipes that were fashioned first out of bamboo. The next thing was there was an invention to make concrete pipes. If you went through Glendora or any area of the valley that had citrus groves, you would see these concrete pipes sticking up in there. They were standpipes. The growers were assigned times when they could draw water from the standpipes, which at that time was just by gravity through a furrow through the ground. Probably not very efficient.
In Glendora, the rainfall was irregular, and they had to use groundwater, so they had to pump. And so there was a cost to the oil or the gas required to pump to push the water through the system out to the sprinklers. And Orton was trying to, I think, reduce his cost for farming. And so what he did was he figured out a way through his tinkering to make the sprinklers distribution uniformity more even, so that way he had less water to pump. What
he was doing, and he had a real purpose for it. He wanted to take care of his grove and in a better way and find a more efficient way to do it so that you weren't wasting water and the trees would be healthier.
He was trying to solve a problem he heard from someone. Orton cared about these people and the fact that this was something that was really kind of bothersome, and then he wanted to make sure that there was some sort of solution in the works for it. So I absolutely think he wanted to help people, and I think that's why he gave Clem and Mary the ability to go sell those sprinklers, because he thought other farmers can use this to solve their problems. And although he didn't want to have to do it, he knew that they could get out and actually provide it to people.
When you look at Orton Englehart's original design of the impact sprinkler, he was working on inventing that thing in the 1920s. In those early designs, you could see how he was a tinkerer, because he took what he had available to him and was able to make prototypes that he could test, right, and then improve. He'd find out how it works and iterate to make it better.
He used things like tin cans to look at ways to address wind pressure. He took springs off of whisks and use them to contribute to that sprinkler. So through that, he was able to design something that the sprinkler kind of stopped as it went along so that it could create that uniform pattern and it just didn't spin around shooting out water. The first sprinkler that he did was a full circle sprinkler. And then he came back with a second patent, which was for a part circle sprinkler. And a part circle sprinkler would be one that it could stop anywhere from 20 degrees to 340 degrees. And so that was a type of sprinkler they might use in a corner of a field or along an edge of a field.
All the other sprinklers out there were essentially spinners. They'd spin around and they'd throw water all over the place, in a 360-degree fashion. That creates two problems. One is the water doesn't go very far because it's a horsetail effect, right? It's whipping around in a circle. And B, if the sprinkler's running, you can't go up to it to move it or adjust it because you're going to get soaking wet. So he developed the impact sprinkler, which solves both of those problems, right? So it steps around in a circular motion, and so the water gets thrown much further. And of course, it's slower, so you can walk up to it and adjust it or move it without getting soaking wet. I think also what made him successful was the fact that, he's working with his friend, Clem LaFetra, and he would show Orton's versions of the impact sprinkler to growers and bring back feedback. Orton ultimately perfected this impact sprinkler, and it was Rainbird's first product that Clem LaFetra founded Rainbird with.
Orton invented it. He didn't want to sell it. Clem and Mary helped him go through the patent process to get it patented to protect his invention. They also went out and sold it. And Clem was involved he sold beekeeping supplies to other citrus farmers. And so he was traveling all over Southern California. So he was able to take these sprinklers around and sell them. He would go out and take orders for these sprinklers during the week, and they'd come back on weekends and build them in the LaFetra barn. Mary, who actually ran a clothing production facility, she managed the whole operation. In her spare time, she ordered all the parts and did the purchasing and the invoicing. So she took care of all the business side of it.
Many of the people in town used Rainbird sprinklers. I'm pretty sure as time went on, they all did, because they saw the value of it. They could see what was happening and how much more efficient it was and how it worked. So it was an investment financially, but it was so much more efficient, and the trees were healthier. It was better for the trees.
If you look at Orton's patents, he has obviously a patent on the impact sprinkler, but he has several other patents. And these patents were all issued over the next, 10 or 15 years. And so he had a pretty long relationship with developing products for Rainbird.
In Orton's workshop, right, we saw several different iterations of the product. You can almost get in his head and you can see the evolution. And I think it stands just as true today, right? Some of those products still very much exist. The impact sprinkler uses some sound, just mechanical principles. If you look and evaluate some of Rainbird's products today in our ag line, we still make brass impact sprinklers. We have other versions that, very much you can look at them and trace their history back. And I think some of the work that he did, obviously it led to the development of Rainbird, but I think then that also probably led to commercializing the concept of irrigation.
A group of us formed a organization, Glendora Preservation, because we worried that we were losing all of our history and everything else. And I've been working on preserving the history of Orton Englehart's shed and all of his artifacts since about 1977. We were asked if we wanted to go up to his original ranch and preserve anything on the property because it was going to be developed. And we said, oh heavens, yes, we couldn't wait to get up there, and we did. And we found all the stuff that's inside the shed here. We didn't know what we were picking up. We were just throwing it in boxes and bringing it down here.
It's amazing to go through this little park. You'll see all the kitchen gadgets that they have in the house and how these people lived back in that time frame. But then we've got Orton's shed. We get to see a little bit about what his workshop looked like and the tools that he used to create his first sprinkler.
If Orton was around today and he walked in, he would be amazed at how fast we can build prototypes and test them and iterate.
I'd love to see his reaction to all that's happened with Rainbird since he started. He'd be so amazed to know that his sprinklers are being controlled by satellites in the sky. He would never believe it.
He never had the ego that it was like it was my invention. He was just a guy who farmed.
He didn't want any credit for anything. It was something he enjoyed doing, and that's what he was doing.
He had a vision of problems he could solve. And through that, he was able to create something that changed an industry.